a beginner's guide to running profitable ads on Google. Hi guys, it's Sam Day here from DeyTips.com, helping serious entrepreneurs like you to boost sales to your products and services online using simple but super effective online marketing tips and tricks. If you are a serious entrepreneur, then make sure you subscribe to this channel and click that bell notification button as well, so you never miss a tip that could help you to boost your online earnings. Now, in today's video, we have a very special guest. We have Darren Taylor from thebigmarketer.com. Now, he shares some really incredible tips and resources for you guys who are planning on running Google ads. Now, if you're planning on running Google ad campaigns, there's a number of things that you want to keep in mind to make sure that your campaigns are profitable, and we have this discussion in our interview, so make sure you stay tuned and watch right to the very end. I'm going to be leaving some links to his social media in the description down below as well, so make sure you go and follow Darren, and I hope you enjoy our interview. Yeah, Darren, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel. Thank you so much for being here, man. Can you tell us a little bit about...
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course, yeah. If your subscribers don't know who I am, I'm Darren Taylor, known as the Big Marketer. I've got a YouTube channel similar to what you're doing, online marketing training, best practice, tips and advice, that kind of thing, really. And I've been in marketing for years, mostly from an agency side all the way through to working in quite senior marketing roles digitally and also broader marketing as well. So yeah, it's really, this YouTube channel, from my point of view, is a way to connect with people I want to connect with, which is the audience who want to learn marketing, get better at what they're doing. I've got a bit of an obsession with digital marketing, and I think this is the perfect mix of what I want to do in terms of bringing that knowledge, kind of meeting people like yourself who are also in the game, which is really good. So the channel's really is like a gateway for me to speak to the audience and really help train people and develop marketing, really. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. So just before we get into the main content, I want to know, because you've got such great content on your YouTube channel, and I actually stumbled across your YouTube channel and approached you, and I was like, man, we got to have you on the channel. But what was the kind of the main inspiration behind thebigmarketer.com and that brand that you're building? What was the inspiration behind starting it?
Well, it was a strange one. I thought to myself initially, and this is a little while ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that I wanted to start an ad agency. A lot of people I used to work with back in the day have done exactly that, especially the people who are really good at selling advertising. And as I started to build a client list and did a lot of consulting and things like that, I realized that when you start an agency, what you're doing is you become a manager as opposed to a marketer in a lot of ways, because you're hiring people and you want the best talent. You've got to keep your finger on the pulse of the industry, but you're not really that specialist. And the part of marketing I love is getting in the platforms and knowing the systems, knowing what people are looking for. And if people, I've been in the marketing game for so long, I know how hard it is when you're starting out and you don't know how to use certain platforms. And for me, that's what I've really enjoyed doing. And I've done that pretty much my whole career. And, the whole time I've been in marketing, helping people, guiding people. And that's the value I like to give. So when it came to the future of what I want to do from a marketing point of view, it just made sense for me to become a trainer. And I started watching videos on developing a training business. And quite honestly and quite frankly, the person who had the biggest impact on what I'm doing now is probably Gary Vee.
Wow.
Simply because it was kind of that personal branding. What are you doing to make people aware of you? How are you going to become known in your industry? And then I decided, what format am I going to go for? Am I going to start writing content? Am I going to be an Instagrammer? And I thought, of all the formats of what resonates with me, video resonates the best, because I wouldn't put myself down as a great content writer. It's something that you can be good at, but to be great at it, to get the engagement that you really want, it takes a little while to develop that skill. And it's something that we're all still developing as people who write content in marketing. But for me, video came a lot more natural. I used to do stand-up comedy years ago, back when I was a student, and thought I could be the next Dave Chappelle or something like that. So I've had a lot of practice. I also did a lot of door-to-door sales. So I've got a lot of face-to-face talking experience, and it just kind of resonated. And the channel was created. The Big Marketer was pretty much just I'm big, I'm a marketer. That's about the extent of it. I didn't think the name would be that important, but I just think it fits now, and it's just really gone from there, to be honest.
Yeah. That's one thing I think is really crucial as well, is branding. And we're gonna dive into a lot of that stuff as well in terms of specifically to Google Ads. But yeah, I'm a huge Gary V fan as well. So he's
Yeah.
definitely influenced a lot of my business decisions and a lot of my friends and stuff like that. So yeah,
Good.
I can relate in that respect. So let's dive into Google Ads, because this is what I
Yeah.
really wanted to kind of focus on in this particular interview. There's still a lot of opportunity when it comes to Google Ads. I've got one friend who is currently running Google Ads for her business, and she's kind of like getting
Yeah.
quite big name clients, and she kind of doesn't
Good.
really have a great even understanding of how to use Google Ads, probably to the best of her abilities. So
Sure.
that's just kind of like an indicator to me that it can still drive business for the person who is just kind of figuring themselves out.
Yeah.
Can you kind of like
Yeah.
speak to us about getting started with Google Ads? So someone who is completely new to using Google Ads, what are the kind of things that they should keep in mind when creating their account?
I think the thing to remember is it's all about relevancy and it's all about quality of traffic. So the problem Google have is that they have a complex product that's very hard to use as a new user. So what they're trying to do is push people towards the more simple versions of what they're doing. So what you might notice is when you start a Google account, you might get pushed towards creating what's called the Google Ads Express account, which is a dumbed down version of Google Ads. You don't want to do that because you're not going to have the kind of relevancy you need to get good ROI. So another thing they do is they also have a thing called a smart campaign, which they push you towards, which is kind of giving Google free reign to do a lot of the optimizations yourself, which Google are going in that direction anyway. But the problem is, again, you lose that control, you lose that quality of traffic, because ultimately nobody knows your business better than you do. Google don't know your business better than you do. So the problem is you've got to make sure that Google, I guess when you're using Google Ads, that you set things up in the right way that are focused on your business goals and forget what Google tried to do. So the first thing I would say when you're starting out in Google Ads is really do your keyword research. You've got to really understand how people connect with your market. You've got to understand what people are searching for, how people are searching for, and of course the Google Keyword Planner tool has all that information there for you, and you can use that tool. But again, the other caveat with that tool is a lot of the keyword suggestions might not be relevant, so you shouldn't just pull all your keywords from the planner and put them straight into your campaign. You've got to vet them. You've got to look at things like negative keywords. It's all about focusing on the quality of traffic. You've got to make sure, because ultimately people are clicking to paying to click your ads. So you've got to make sure that the quality is there. Otherwise, you're wasting your budget.
So how would you kind of separate like a quality keyword from a keyword that's I don't know what opposite is, not so quality?
I guess not so good. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think from that point of view, there's two ways to look at it. First of all, you're setting up a brand new campaign, so you do your keyword research. You look at what you think people are searching for. What you've also got to do is when you start seeing keywords that might have a double meaning or something's not quite as straightforward, it might be a bit vague, it might be too broad. So maybe your keyword means other things in other industries, or maybe it's very, very open to potential searches that aren't relevant to your campaign. You've got to use the tools at your disposal. So when you're using that Google Keyword Planner, you've got to look at not just the keywords you want to target, but you've also got to look at what you don't want to target. So straight away, when you set your campaign up, you've got to add those negative keywords in the very beginning. And of course, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody is. So as the campaign progresses and you start getting more searches, then that's the point where you start adding more negative keywords based on what people are looking for. So again, traffic quality and determining which keywords are working for your business. And a lot of the time, what you might find as well, actually, is some keywords that you might think are good for your business and you think this is definitely how people are going to search for my business aren't necessarily the keywords that are going to generate revenue for you. So you can't be too precious with your keywords. If they're not working and the context is right, it matches the landing page, there can be no confusion. You've done those tests to make sure that the content matches what the person's searching for and it doesn't convert, then you've got to get rid of it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you think it's a good keyword, it's clearly not performing.
Cool. Yeah, I like the fact that you touched on negative keywords as well. We're gonna I'm gonna ask you about like keyword match types as well, probably a bit later on. But before we even get into that, I wanted to speak about, because I see a lot in forums, and I've even had clients reach out to me and be like, okay, my Google Ads account has been suspended, or I've kind of there's a policy violation of some sort.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone's getting in trouble with regards to Google, and is that a big issue that you see? And if so, what can you advertisers do to make sure that they're compliant with regards to kind of Google's policies?
Yeah, I think Google have a problem in that there's a lot of advertisers and they can't manually vet everything they do. So they've got a guideline of advertising policies, and if you break those policies, it will understand that you've done it within the account automatically. It's all automated to a large degree. So you might do something that's not necessarily a violation. Google will suspend your ads. You've got to get onto the phone to them straight away, and then resolve the issue in that way. But what I will say is a lot of the time I've spoken to clients, and even in previous roles before when I used to work at agency side, there are people who do violate the rules and then hope and think they can sneak through the net. And I'd advise that doesn't happen, because you're going to cause yourself problems in the long run. If your ads are not running, you're not making any money. So that becomes a problem. And I think the area that Google needs to improve on is that approval process, the speed of doing it. I think when you set a new campaign up, it can take a day and a half before Google approve it quite often, and that's a problem in itself. A lot of the violations I see quite commonly are trademark violations, punctuation violations, things like that, really. So there's a lot of things you can do to, I guess, stop that from happening, to make sure you're across all the details of all the policies and you understand what you can and can't say. Using use of brand, use of trademark, anything like that, it's got to be really important. The other disapproval you'll also see is based on your landing page, because Google can crawl your landing page, and they do crawl your landing page. If there's any policy violations in there in terms of the industries you're advertising in, any potential crossover with industries. I've had a client before who's in the medical field, and they mentioned the name of a drug on their website, and it got all of their ads suspended because they mentioned this particular drug. They weren't allowed to advertise on. They didn't have a license to promote it. They weren't promoting the drug. They just mentioned that's something patients can take for a certain condition. So that caused an issue as well. So you've got to make sure that you look at your website as well. And if you need to remove anything or change anything, you've got to be ready to do that, because Google can be ruthless. I very rarely see them overturn things like that. So you've got to be really on the ball. But I think the more money you spend on Google, the better level of service you get. So what you'll find is bigger advertisers spending more money can get a quicker turnaround of services. They get to speak to the account managers who are based, if you're in the European Union or the EU, then Dublin's their head office. You get to speak directly with the guys there. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do if you're spending more money. If you're spending less money, then it's a bit more difficult to get that kind of personalized response from Google. So it can be a bit frustrating, but stay the right side of the policies, you'll generally be okay. If you think you're not okay, then definitely get on the phone. Don't submit a ticket. Pick the phone up, because that's the quickest way. And actually, to be fair to Google, they do answer the phone pretty quickly when you do call them up. So I think that's probably the best way to go.
Awesome. So how would you go about finding their number to call them?
So when you log into your account, you'll notice a little bubble in the top right corner with a question mark. If you click on that, it will come up with your localized telephone number to call Google. Failing that, they've got a ton of help and support guides online. If you just type in Google Ads contact number, then your localized link will probably be the top one, and then just click that, give them a call, and go from there.
Awesome. A question I do have off the back of that is, you mentioned that the more you spend is kind of like the more personalized service you get. Would you recommend in that case, even going with a Google Ads agency then, someone who might have more of a kind of a relationship with Google?
It's a difficult one, because I think the debate between agency and client-side marketing, in-house marketing teams has been going on for a long time. And I think it's all down to how the business operates and what kind of products they're doing, how quickly and agile they are. I find that when a business has worked with an agency, there's obviously agency costs involved. But then what you do get, as you say, is that big overall spend with Google, a good close support from those big ad exchanges. So you definitely get a lot more help in that regard, but you do pay for it. But then the advantage of client side is, of course, that you can move quickly, because you get to literally meet face-to-face with internal teams. If you're launching a new product, you can literally go and meet the product owner and talk to them about your advertising campaign. So it becomes a bit of a balancing act. I would say if you're a smaller business, an agency might not necessarily be the first thing you should do. If you're learning about Google Ads, try it yourself, see how far you can take it, maybe even hire a freelancer in the first instance before going full agency. In fact, a lot of agencies won't take you as a client if you're not spending a certain amount anyway, because it becomes uneconomical. So I think there's a couple of things to consider there. And I think start with yourself. If you're not too sure, you haven't got the time, and you want to learn as you go, work with a freelancer, because again, with a freelancer, you do get that personalization of service, and hopefully the freelancer also has clients on board that spend a significant amount and they get that Google partner status. So there's a few things you can do there. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go. But for a bigger advertiser who has a complex product or a large portfolio of offering, an agency is definitely going to usually be the better choice because they've got the connection with Google, and that's going to really help.
Awesome, some great advice there. I wanted to move on to bidding because
Yeah.
essentially that's kind of like Google's model in terms of Google Ads. So can you explain like how the whole process of bidding for keywords, how it works?
Google Ads is an auction. It's essentially like any other auction where you bid for a particular product. In this case, the product is the keyword. So if you, for example, are a plumber based in London in the UK and you want to appear on the Google search results page when someone types in the keyword plumber in London, then you'd set the most you're willing to pay for that particular keyword. Now, your competitors will do the same, and Google will determine who shows on that search results page the highest or even at all based on your ad rank, which is a mixture of your keyword versus the quality of your ad campaign as well, which is another factor to look at. So it's not just a case of whoever bids the most shows the highest on the page. There's also a quality score, which is a factor where all of your keywords are rated from a score from 1 to 10 by Google based on relevancy and expected factors from how your landing page is going to perform to how your click-through rates in terms of how many people will click your ad over your competitor's ad. Those factors will play into the quality score. So your bid and your quality score are what forms what's called your ad rank, depending on showing where you show on the page. So if you're, for example, you want to bid a ton of money, say, for example, £10 on that particular keyword, but your ad rank is very low because that particular keyword has a quality score of maybe 2 out of 10. If your competitor's quality score is 10 out of 10, they can afford to bid a lot less for that keyword because the quality score is the multiplier effect. Wherever your bid is, times it by your quality score, and that will give you your general ad rank number. And that's the system Google uses to rank adverts on the search results page, and it determines how much you pay for your traffic as well. So hope that makes sense. It's quite a complex process, and it happens in real time every single auction based on the bids all of your competitors and that you set as well. So it happens every time someone performs a search.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think even goes back to kind of one of the first things you mentioned, which was relevancy as well, in terms of quality score, but also how relevant is that keyword to the actual landing page that you're taking people to. Can you speak about some other things that might influence, well, some of the major things, the main things that might influence quality score and getting a better quality score with your Google Ads?
Yes, so there's 3 main factors. One of them is your landing page experience, one of them is your expected click-through rate, and the other one is your ad relevancy. So all of those 3 factors you need to look at from back to front. So if you're bidding on a keyword, you need to make sure it's mentioned within your ads because that's going to provide a layer of relevancy of your keyword to your ads. Then from there on, you look, okay, it's relevant to my ads. Now I need to make it relevant to my landing page as well. So that relevancy chain goes all the way through from your keywords to your ads to your landing page. Make sure all of them are relevant to the keywords you're bidding on. If you, for example, create an advert where you bid on a particular keyword, you don't mention the keyword in your advert, and then the landing page also doesn't mention any variation of that keyword. Now, again, I want to stress that you don't put every single keyword on your landing page. As long as the subject matter is clear, Google will understand it. They'll know exactly what you're trying to achieve and understand the relevancy factors behind it. So you've got to make sure it's relevant all the way through. Now, one of the biggest factors of quality score is your click-through rate, because ultimately it's how appealing are your ads on the search results page, because that's a huge relevancy score. Because if I go to Google and type something in to search for a service and I see an advert that's not relevant consistently, then I'm never going to click that advert. And therefore Google will look at that and say, okay, this person's advert is just not relevant, so why would anyone click it? Therefore, I'm going to demote the quality score. Whereas, conversely, if your advert's highly relevant, highly clickable, you've got the good call to actions in place, you've got a good description of your service, and it's a compelling text ad and it gets a lot of clicks, Google looks at the search results page and goes, oh, okay, this advert is highly relevant to what this user's searching for with this particular keyword, therefore, I'm going to give them a higher quality score based on that factor. So yeah, it's all about making sure you've got the relevancy in place, but you're also appealing to what the person's looking for, which again ties back to relevancy. But it's kind of PPC is kind of what's known as the left brain, right brain thing, where you've got to write good text ads, which is kind of creative, but you've also got to be technical with your numbers as well and understand the technologies of the platform to get the best results. So it can be a bit tricky, but it's definitely something that you can pick up.
Awesome. There's so much there as well, and I think even like you speaking about click-through rates, we could go into so many different things about how to improve click-through rates and so on and so forth. And that's why I love your channel, and I'm going to be linking your channel in the description. So anyone who's watching this and you're thinking, I don't know what's going on here, or you're stuck, or there's a specific keyword, I'm sure they'll be able to find the information on your channel, or leave it in a comment, and we'll try and get to that. I wanted
Sounds good. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really valuable channel that you've got there. So it will definitely help a lot of people. I wanted to go into keyword types. So not everybody kind of knows about the different types of keywords available when you're going into pay-per-click marketing, and how to use them, when to use them. So can you speak a little bit on your experience about what type of keywords there are available, and how you would kind of advise to use them?
Yeah, sure. So there are 4 kind of positive keyword match types, and obviously negative keywords standalone, which we've kind of covered a little bit in terms of negative keywords. But the 4 kind of keyword match types that are targeting your ad campaign, you've got broad match, you've got modified broad match, you've got phrase match, and you've got exact match. So all of those different types of keywords have different ways that interact with how users search for products. So let's start at the very top. This is an obvious one. It's broad match, which means essentially you create your keyword with no kind of special characters next to it. And I'll go on to the special characters in a moment. But if you write a keyword with no special characters in your campaign, then that's called a broad match keyword. Now, what that means is Google will match that keyword to whatever it thinks the user is trying to get with your product. So if I, for example, set a broad match keyword of plumber in London, Google might match that to a search, for example, of someone typing in boiler repairs in London. So you can see that it's not mentioning my keyword specifically, but Google are tying it to that relevancy because they've just decided that's how it's going to match, which is kind of the premise of broad match. Now, you might think that sounds good, but it's actually terrible, because what happens is you end up with a ton of irrelevant searches going towards your campaign. So I think my first bit of advice in terms of keyword match types straight away is never, ever use broad match, because you can do so much better. You can target the traffic you want. You can still expand on the traffic you want to get to make sure you're not missing out on searches without using broad match. So I'd say straight away, don't use broad match. Stay away from it. Doesn't matter if Google call you up and say, add these broad match keywords to your campaign. Don't do it. It's a waste of money. What you should be doing, if you want to open up your campaign to potential searchers and don't want to limit yourself to exactly what people are typing in, you can use what's called modified broad match. So if you create a keyword with a plus sign in front of each word within that keyword, it's called a broad match modifier. Now what that means is that that term with the plus in front of it has to be in the user's search term. So as I mentioned before, in the previous example, if I typed in plumber in London, and it was a broad match keyword, Google could match it to any number of queries. Whereas if it was modified broad match, then the 3 words plumber, in, and London will have to appear in the user's search term. So if they type in cheap plumber in London today, then it would show your adverts, because you've got the 3 words within there showing. So that's definitely a way you can open up your campaign to more traffic. And it's probably my favorite match type because of that reason. So you're not restricting yourself to only what you think users are typing in. You also pick up new queries as well that you may not have thought of, and you also get to show more often as well. So that can work really well for you. So I think that is a good match type to use. Now there's 2 more match types remaining. One is exact match, and the other is phrase match. So phrase match means that the keyword has to appear in the same order as it's defined by the user. So say, for example, going back to that same example of plumber in London, if I typed in plumber London today, a phrase match keyword wouldn't show. So phrase match keyword is where you put double quotes on either side of the whole keyword term. And what that would do is it means that your keyword has to appear exactly in the order shown from the user's search. So if the user searches something that triggers your keywords, as long as they type in their search query and it triggers your keywords to show in the exact order they're shown within that keyword, then your adverts will show for that particular search. So it's a good way of restricting negative searches. It's good for if the ordering of your words in terms of which order the keywords appear in is important. So here's a perfect example. I worked with a home care business who do elderly care but in home. So that's very crucial, because if you reverse those two words, you get care home as opposed to home care. So phrase match became really important, because the ordering of those words means that I get bad traffic if I don't use that match type. So that becomes really important. Whether I use that match type as a positive keyword or add as a phrase match negative keyword, care home as an example, then that would help me control the quality of my traffic as well. So phrase match becomes really important. Exact match, the last one, if you put square brackets on either side of your keyword term, then that will trigger your ads only when the user types in exactly what's within those square brackets, or at least that's how it used to be. I think it was about 2015, Google introduced close variants to exact match, because again, Google, they want to try and help users get as much traffic as possible and not miss out on irrelevant searches. But Google also like to make a lot of money, and they want to increase the amount of clicks they generate on the search results. A lot of the ways people controlled their traffic was with exact match keywords. So they can guarantee that my ads will only show if the user types this in exactly as I've put it. There's no second guessing. Google can't match it to anything else. But in 2015, Google added something called close variant match to exact match, which means if you type something in exactly, then yes, it will trigger your ads. But if Google deems something to be close enough to what you've typed in your exact match, they will show your ads again regardless. So from there, you need to do a ton of negative keywords. If you are genuinely targeting specific searches only, you need to control that traffic with negative keywords. So exact match still is the strictest match of keyword. It will still limit your ads the most, but it's not like it used to be. You'll still show potentially for irrelevant searches, and it will be based on what Google thinks you want to show for as well. So you've got to be really on the ball and make sure you know your negative keywords. You're keeping an eye on your traffic in what's called the search terms report in Google Ads, because even with all these keyword match types, there's still a chance that rogue traffic could get through. So it's really important to make sure you keep an eye on that report and add negative keywords consistently. You'll get to the point where you don't need to add many negatives anymore, because you've been running the campaign long enough. You've pretty much seen how people are searching. But in the early days, you should definitely be keeping an eye on that report. And in fact, in the early days of campaigns, I dip in and out of that report consistently throughout the day as data starts generating, just to make sure the traffic's in the right place until I'm comfortable with it. So yes, I'd say that's really key, the traffic quality.
Wow, some great stuff there. Again, so much in there that we can dive into, but we, for the purposes of time, we can't. But it's just so much knowledge and so much useful stuff. Moving on slightly into conversion optimization. So
Yeah.
I often teach a lot of my consulting clients, whenever they're going into whatever kind of traffic method they might be embarking on, whether it be Google pay-per-click, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is, you never really know what results you're going to get. But initially, it's kind of buying data. You're kind of figuring out what is going to be working. So can you speak to us about some of the top ways that you have found kind of really helps some of your clients out when it comes to like conversion optimization on Google Ads?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing is really, if you are launching a new Google Ads campaign, try and use, if you've been generating traffic previously, maybe it's organic search, maybe you've run campaigns in the past, or you've partnered with somebody, try and gauge and benchmark the current performance of your website so you can understand how it's currently converting. Now, of course, PPC traffic should be higher converting than a ton of other types of traffic out there, but it's good to understand what your website's doing and how it's performing. Next thing I'd say is you need to do an audit on all of the things you want to track and why. So when you're feeding conversions into Google Ads, you need to be aware that a lot of the bidding strategies in Google Ads will focus on your acquisition, your conversion. So you need to decide what you want to track and why you want to track it. So say, for example, I've got a website, it's got a telephone number in where people can call to make a sale or a booking. I want to track that. So I need to track that phone call, whether it's when somebody clicks it on a mobile device, or if they actually make the phone call, I can actually put a tag on my website to do a dynamic phone number replacement that will use a tracking number. So if somebody does call that number, it can be tracked to a specific search and a specific keyword and a specific time as well. That's important. If I've got a contact form on there, then I need to track that. If I've got an email address, do I want to really track if somebody clicks it? Because that's a bit of a softer conversion point. Do I want to track when somebody subscribes to my blog? Again, a softer conversion point. Maybe a content download. Again, softer conversion point. So you've got to ask yourself, what kind of data do you want to give Google Ads? And what do you want it to make decisions off the back of? Now, if I'm a big B2B company and I know for every 10 people that download my free spreadsheet or free software, then I get X number of sales in the future, then yeah, I might absolutely want to add, joining my mailing list and downloading a piece of content, for example. But if I'm a small business, and again, go back to my favorite example of a plumber, and I just want the phone to ring or my forms to be submitted, then joining my mailing list isn't really important. It's not going to get me any money, so I wouldn't feed that information into Google Ads. So once you've identified the conversion points you want Google to track, it's all about making those conversion points as easy and as straightforward as possible on your website. So if you are wanting people to phone you, how easily can they find their number? Say, for example, they go on your website, they like what they're hearing, how quickly could they be on the phone to you? If they have to click onto a contact page and then scroll down the page to see the map with the contact details, then it's just too far away. You need to have that contact, readily available. A lot of people put it in the top right corner. A lot of people these days are also using widgets that float wherever you scroll on the page, so you can do a call to action at any point with a floating call to action. Essentially, what you want to do is make sure that it's as visible as possible to the user without bombarding them. So it's a fine balancing act, because you don't want to appear spammy. You don't want to be over bombarding the user with buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now. What you want to do is make it subtle, but in the right place at the right time for the user to interact with. So that's really important. Again, form submissions, same advice I'd give. A lot of people sometimes have landing pages where the form's visible straight away, so they know exactly where to fill the form in. Again, I'm an advocate of that. If you could put a contact form on a selling page as opposed to on a contact page, that will really help as well. But in the long run, with conversion optimization, it's more of a science than an art in a lot of ways. Now, I've given a ton of advice on what you should be doing to make conversions easier. So say, for example, you've done that now, what's next? What's next is identifying what users are actually doing on your website and running tests to see what you should be doing next in order to improve your website. So there are a ton of tools out there for small, tiny, micro businesses that can do it for free in their smallest package. For example, my favorite tool on this is Hotjar, which is a heat mapping tool and an A/B testing tool. So for me, I would use that tool to see how people are interacting with my website, look at the click map, look at the scroll map to see how far people are scrolling down particular pages. If I notice that my call to action is in what's known as like the blue zone when people are scrolling, it means hardly any eyeballs are getting on it, therefore I need to move it up the page. If I see someone dwelling on something, is it because they don't understand the information or because they find it interesting? Let's look at the conversions off the back of that session. So what you're really doing is you need to be constantly testing to the point where you get to, to the point where Amazon or someone like massive like that would be, where you're literally testing the wording of a button or the font of a button or the color of a button, as opposed to moving things around the page and testing different page layouts or different content. You want to make sure you've nailed it all down all the way through, and then eventually you get to the point where you're really testing the smallest minor things. So there's tiny marginal gains of maybe 0.5% more conversions a day or whatever it might be. But there's going to be some big quick wins in there. If you've never done any heat mapping or A/B testing before, you're definitely going to get your conversion rate up from doing that. So start off with the obvious, the kind of general conversion rate optimizations you should be making, and from there the guesswork has to end. You have to start using science. You need to use a tool. Another one is Neil Patel's Crazy Egg, another tool I've used as well for that. You need to start measuring specifically. Now, of course, these tools aren't always free. They often do have a free package, but it's not always going to be the case. So I think try the free version in the first step to see if you can get enough data with that. You might get to a point where you have too many sessions where you have to pay for it, but this cost of a subscription, at least in the short term, is definitely worth it. So even if you do subscribe to the tool for like 3 or 4 months, and then by that time you're comfortable, you can cancel the subscription. It's fine, unless you buy it for the year, of course. But it's up to you. But I think it's definitely worth investing in conversion rate optimization, because the nominal cost of a tool is going to massively be outweighed by the value you get in conversion. So it's definitely worth it.
Awesome. And I feel like as well, conversion rate optimization is a little bit like going to the gym, so to speak, in terms of like you put the ad out and you just using one tool, you can kind of see a lot of things and kind of see a lot of progress. Similar to going to the gym, you go to the gym, your first couple of weeks, you see a lot of progress, but then as you go quite often you kind of plateau a little bit, and that's kind of similar, I guess, with ads as well. You know, when you're implementing all the tools, you're getting initial data, you're saying, okay, that doesn't work, you're changing things, maybe even using different keywords, and you're kind of seeing a big percentage increase in terms of conversions. But then it gets kind of, like you were saying, maybe the odd little percentage here and there that you're trying to optimize for later on down the line.
Exactly that. Yeah, that's the good analogy. Actually, I've never heard it put like that before, but that's actually perfect. It is like going to the gym. You do build up muscle and strength really quickly. Then you hit that plateau. You got to watch your macros, and you got to be really careful. You got to do more intense training and get those extra gains. So yeah, that's a perfect analogy.
100%. So I wanted to. We've covered so much, and I'm going to be, again, like I've mentioned, leaving links to your YouTube channel. I'd highly recommend, guys, you go and check his YouTube channel out. You will learn so much. I'm even learning so much as well. But before we end off, I wanted to quickly touch on product listing ads on Google, because a lot of people still don't realize that you can actually advertise your products there as well, and it gives you your products kind of like a nice little display, and people can kind of see what it is that they could potentially get before they make a decision to click and potentially cost you money. So can you speak a little bit about product listing ads and basically how they work? Do you recommend doing them? What tips and advice do you have for people with regards to that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think product listing ads are very powerful. If you're in e-commerce, you're selling a physical product, then it should be something you can, to be fair, actually, you can run them alongside normal search ads as well. So you can actually dominate the search results page with your product at the top, and then below that you can have your paid advert, and if you're really good, you can have your organic result in there as well. So you can definitely hit everything in the search results page. But with the products ad, there's something to consider, which is your product feed. So when you create a product listing advert, you're not actually creating, well, technically you can create individual adverts, but it doesn't make any sense. What you need to do is create a feed of products. So you go into Google's Merchant Center, you download a template sheet. So you can either do this with a physical download, or you can create a template in Google Sheets, so it's in the cloud. Now, a lot of businesses use the Sheets version because you can update the inventory live with the live online sheet. So you can plug different systems into that sheet to update your inventory. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating an inventory of products with a unique, SKU code. You're creating the description, the product name, the pricing, the availability, the shipping options. All of those different things you'd see as an e-commerce product, you're adding to this spreadsheet of a product feed. Once you've built that product feed, it's all about optimizing that feed. So you understand how people would potentially search for your physical products. It can be quite a difficult one to do, because how different could a mug be, for example, as a coffee cup or something like that? Is it in this particular niche? Is it a particular design? You need to really hone down that product title and description as well, because they are the two factors Google is going to pick up within your product feed. Because unlike search advertising, when you advertise on Google's shopping, you don't set keywords. You set a product feed, and Google interprets that feed and serves your adverts to customers based on the back of how well you've created your feed. So it's really important to make sure you've got a really good description that maximizes on the potential things people can type in. And you can also make sure your product naming as well is perfect for that. Now, just because there's no keywords in a product campaign doesn't mean you can't optimize it from a keyword perspective, though, because the most important thing about optimizing a Google product advert is you need to make sure you add negative keywords really, really often, and more often than with a search campaign. Because, of course, with a search campaign, you can control the traffic quality, you can set your keyword match types and things like that. So you can generally get an idea of the kinds of searches your product's going to get. Whereas with a shopping campaign, you can't set your keywords. You can only go by the product feed. So you need to look at what people are typing in to find your product and get rid of all of the things that are irrelevant. So set as many negative keywords as you can that aren't relevant to the product itself. So you've got to be really careful. I've seen campaigns where you set them live, writing, with the best intentions of writing a good description that describes the product perfectly with kind of keyword-rich text. You've got a good title that makes the product clear as to what it is, but for some reason Google can serve it for some irrelevant searches. So you've got to make sure you really hone down that negative keyword list and really stay on top of it, especially at the beginning of a campaign, because at that point you're the most vulnerable because you've got no or very few negative keywords. So it's really important.
Cool. So you can't bid. So you don't bid for keywords per se, but you can put negative keywords.
Absolutely, yes. So you're bidding for product positioners in terms of what Google thinks your product contextually matches to. So you're optimizing a feed, and you're bidding on getting your feed to show your products. So you do set a bid at that level as the most you're willing to pay for a click. It's still pay per click at the end of the day. You can definitely set your max you're willing to pay. And you can also leverage different bidding strategies as well in terms of some of those revenue-based bidding strategies like target return on ad spend, for example. So you can tell Google, here's my budget, go ahead and push my adverts based on this potential ROI. So there's a lot of smart bidding you can use for these campaigns as well. But the main thing is really those negative keywords, because there's only so much you can do with a product's ad. You can optimize the click-through rate, and I think compelling images helps as well. And you can do all those kind of general ad optimizations. But because of that, not using keyword technology, you really need to make sure the negatives are in place, because I think that's probably the most important thing with a shopping campaign.
Makes sense. Some great advice. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really incredible. I'm going to be leaving some of your links in the description down below. So guys, make sure you go and check out Darren's channel. Where can we find you other than, we know you've got your YouTube channel. What else have you got going on online or offline?
So, I'm on Twitter. I've got Twitter. I'm at The Big Marketer if you want to stay in touch and follow what I'm doing on there. I've got an Instagram, but I don't really use it that often, really. But again, it's The Big Marketer. YouTube, of course, is /The Big Marketer. So everything on every social media platform is The Big Marketer. Our website is thebigmarketer.com, so you can stay up to date with my blog and all what I'm doing over there as well. I'm soon to be launching a few courses as well in the future. So if you want to stay in touch, then that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thanks again. And yeah, enjoy your evening.
No, thank you, Sam. It's been a pleasure. I'll definitely be looking forward to a lot more of your videos as well. Really interesting stuff you're putting out, so I'll be keeping an eye on what you're doing. And yeah, let's do this again in the future sometime.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Take care.